The sound of my own front door slamming in my face still echoes in my mind 6 months later. Not just any door, the door to the lake house I'd bought with my own sweat, my own sacrifice, my own damn money. The house where my sister Kayla had just told me there was no room for me, suggesting I sleep in my car like some unwanted stranger. Standing there in the dark, listening to my family laugh and party inside what was supposed to be my sanctuary, I realized something that would change everything. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most are actually the ones slowly bleeding you dry. I'm Avery, and this is the story of how I went from being my family's favorite ATM to becoming the villain in their twisted narrative, all because I finally learned to say no. Let me start with who I was before everything fell apart. At 31, I thought I'd made it. After grinding through 60-hour work weeks, learning programming languages until my eyes burned, and proving myself over and over in a tech industry that didn't always welcome women who looked like me, I was finally pulling in real money. The kind that meant sleeping easy at night. The kind that meant buying groceries without that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. 3 years back, I'd managed to buy my first real place, a 2-bedroom apartment where I could actually have people over without cringing at the peeling paint and secondhand everything. After years of ramen dinners and wearing thrift store clothes until they fell apart, it felt like victory. But honestly, it was nothing compared to what came next. That's when I found the lake house. The moment I walked through that front door, something clicked into place. 2 bedrooms, a massive deck overlooking water so clear you could see straight to the bottom, and enough space for me to spread out when I was wrestling with complex coding problems that required total focus. The peace out there was something I'd never experienced growing up in our cramped family home. No traffic, no sirens, just water lapping against the shore and wind moving through ancient oak trees. I saved every penny for 8 months. Skipped meals out, wore the same 3 work outfits in rotation, drove my ancient Honda until the transmission started making sounds like a dying animal. But I did it. I bought that house outright. No mortgage hanging over my head like a sword, no monthly payments to stress about. Just pure, clean ownership of something beautiful that was completely mine. Now, about my family. Understanding them is crucial to understanding how everything went so spectacularly wrong. Mom had spent most of her life as a secretary, the kind of job where you smile through everything and never complain, until retirement hit last year. Dad does maintenance at the local school, honest work that keeps him busy but doesn't pay much. Justin, my younger brother at 28, bounces between jobs like he's allergic to staying anywhere long enough to get promoted. Right now he's at some warehouse, but there's always drama about the hours, the boss, the uniform, whatever's making his life difficult this week. Then there's Kayla, 25 and working part-time retail while supposedly studying for some certification that never seems to get finished. She's mastered this art of making everything sound like someone else's fault, especially when that someone is me. Here's the thing that made every family dinner feel like navigating a minefield. I was making about 4 times what any of them brought home. And somehow, in their minds, that made me the villain. It started innocently enough, the way these things always do. Justin couldn't make rent 1 month, so I covered it. Kayla's car died, and I helped with repairs. Mom and Dad were sweating over electric bills during a brutal summer, so I took care of it. I genuinely didn't mind helping. Family should help family, right? That's what I'd been raised to believe. But then something shifted. It wasn't requested anymore, wasn't asked for with gratitude. It became expected. I started sending Justin $800 every month for his studio apartment. Kayla got $1,100 for her 1-bedroom. Mom received $400 monthly for utilities and groceries, plus whatever cash I'd slip them during visits. Do the math. That's over $2,300 a month, just gone. But I kept paying because I thought that's what good daughters and sisters did. The comments started small but grew sharper, like paper cuts that you don't notice until they're bleeding. I'd show up to Sunday dinner with a new handbag, a $45 Target bag, literally my first purchase in 2 years, and Kayla would give me this look like I'd walked in wearing diamonds. Must be nice to buy whatever you want while some of us worry about paying bills, she'd say, her voice dripping with resentment. I hadn't bought myself anything new in months. This was the first bag I'd purchased in years, and it wasn't even expensive. But suddenly I was the bad guy for spending my own money on something I actually needed. Justin did it too, always with this passive-aggressive tone that made my skin crawl. Hey, Avery, saw you got those new shoes. Meanwhile, I'm eating rice and beans again because work cut my hours. Never mind that I just covered his rent and he'd spent the previous weekend at some expensive concert with his friends, posting pictures on Instagram of him and his buddies living it up. The hypocrisy was staggering, but pointing it out would just make me look petty. Dad usually stayed quiet during these comments, but he'd nod along like they had a valid point. Mom would try to smooth things over in this passive-aggressive way that somehow made it worse. Oh, you know your brother and sister. They just wish they had your opportunities. Opportunities. Like I'd won some cosmic lottery instead of working my ass off for everything I had. The worst part was how they talked about my success like it was pure luck. Like I hadn't spent 4 years studying computer science while working nights at a diner to pay for it, coming home with my feet aching and grease under my fingernails to study algorithms until 3 in the morning. Like I hadn't put in those brutal 60-hour weeks for 2 years straight, being the first one in and the last one out, just to prove myself. Like I hadn't taught myself 3 programming languages on my own time, sacrificing weekends and social life to get promoted. Some people just get all the breaks, Justin said once at a family barbecue, right in front of me, with this bitter smile that made my stomach turn. I wanted to ask him what breaks he thought I'd gotten, but I bit my tongue like always. I didn't want to start fights or make family gatherings even more uncomfortable than they already were. So I started pulling back. Instead of every Sunday, maybe twice a month. Instead of staying for hours, I'd eat dinner quickly and find an excuse to leave early. The lake house became my refuge from all of it, the one place where I could breathe without someone reminding me how much I owed them simply for existing. When I finally told them about buying the place, I was so excited I could barely contain it. I thought they'd be happy for me, maybe even proud. Instead, the entire table went dead silent. "You bought what?" Mom asked, setting down her fork like I'd just confessed to a crime. "A house by the lake. It's about an hour north of here. Really peaceful, great for working from home when I need to focus." Justin laughed, but there was no humor in it, just this hollow sound that made my chest tight. "Jesus, Avery, another house? How much money do you need?" "It's not about needing money," I said, trying to keep my voice level even though my hands were shaking under the table. "I work hard. I save up. And I wanted a place where I could relax." "Relax," Kayla repeated, like it was some foreign concept she'd never heard before. "Must be nice. Some of us can't even afford to relax in our own apartments because we're worried about making rent." "I help with your rent," I pointed out, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "Right, but think about what else that money could have done," Mom jumped in, waving her hands around like she was conducting some invisible orchestra. "We could have fixed the roof here, or updated the bathroom, or put in that new furnace we've been talking about. You should have discussed this with us first." I stared at her, genuinely shocked. The words felt like a slap. "Discussed it with you? It's my money, Mom. I get to decide how to spend it." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dad cleared his throat and studied his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Justin shook his head like I'd said something unforgivable. Kayla just sat there with this smug expression like she'd won some argument I didn't even know we were having. "I'd like to see this house," Kayla finally said, breaking the tension. Every instinct I had screamed danger, but I ignored it. "Sure," I replied, though alarm bells were already going off in my head. "I'll give you the address. Maybe you can visit next weekend." That next Friday, I drove up to spend a quiet night unpacking and setting up my workspace. Saturday morning, I was on the deck with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the water gold, when I heard Dad's pickup truck crunching down the gravel driveway. They all piled out, Mom, Dad, Justin, and Kayla, and just stood there staring at the place like they were appraising it for auction. The house sits about 50 feet back from the water, with a decent yard and these massive oak trees that give it privacy from the neighbors on either side. I gave them the full tour, and honestly, they seemed genuinely impressed for once. Justin loved the big living room with its stone fireplace. Mom kept talking about how peaceful it was, how she could see herself reading on the deck. Kayla immediately claimed the guest bedroom and asked if she could stay the night. "You know what?" I said Sunday morning, watching them all sprawled around my living room like they lived there. "You guys could come up here when I'm not around." Just let me know ahead of time so we don't double book. Before they left, I gave Mom a spare key. It seemed like the right thing to do, family helping family, sharing what I'd worked so hard for. For about 6 months, everything worked smoothly. They'd text asking if they could use the house for a weekend. I'd say yes, and they'd head up there. I'd usually find things pretty much how I left them, maybe some extra dishes or towels to clean. No big deal. Then one Friday, after finishing a particularly brutal coding project that had consumed 3 weeks of my life, I decided to surprise myself with a solo trip to decompress. I threw some clothes in a bag and drove up without telling anyone. The moment I walked through that door, I knew something was horribly wrong. The place reeked of beer and cigarettes, a smell so thick it hit me like a wall. Pizza boxes were stacked on my kitchen counter like a greasy tower of disrespect. Empty bottles covered every surface, the coffee table, the windowsills, even the mantelpiece. There was something sticky spilled across my hardwood floors that made my shoes stick with every step. My white couch, the one I'd saved up for months to buy, the one I'd researched and compared prices on for weeks, had stains on it that I didn't want to identify. In the guest room, sheets and blankets were thrown around like someone had been having a pillow fight with a tornado. The bathroom was absolutely disgusting, towels soaked and thrown on the floor, toothpaste smeared across the mirror like some abstract art project, and hair clogging the sink drain. I was beyond furious. I walked around taking pictures of everything with shaking hands, documenting the destruction of my sanctuary. This wasn't just messy, this was destroyed. Someone had clearly thrown a rager here and treated my house like a cheap motel room they'd never have to see again. I spent that entire weekend cleaning, scrubbing floors on my hands and knees until my back ached, washing every piece of fabric in the house, trying desperately to get stains out of furniture with every product I could find. By Sunday evening, my hands were raw from cleaning chemicals and my entire body hurt, but the house was finally back to normal. Monday after work, I drove straight to my parents' house. Justin and Kayla were both there for dinner, which was perfect because I wanted to confront all of them at once. We need to discuss what happened at the lake house, I said, pulling out my phone to show them the photos. Kayla glanced at the pictures and shrugged like it was nothing. Oh, that. Yeah, I had some friends over last weekend. Some friends? Kayla, look at these pictures. There's food ground into the carpet, beer spilled everywhere, cigarette burns on my deck furniture. It's your house, Kayla said, waving her hand dismissively. So you should clean it up. I stared at her, speechless. But you made the mess. Justin nodded like Kayla had made a perfectly reasonable point. She's got a point, Avery. You're the homeowner. And you can afford to hire a cleaning service anyway, Mom added with this patronizing tone that made my teeth clench. You're always talking about how well you do at work. What's a few hundred to you? Dad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Kayla's right. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. This is just normal wear and tear. Normal wear and tear. I held up a picture of pizza sauce splattered across my white living room wall. This is normal? You're being dramatic, Kayla said. We're family. Family doesn't keep score about little things like cleaning. Something snapped inside me. I want the key back, I said, holding out my hand to Mom. Avery, don't be hasty, she started. The key. Now. None of you are allowed back until you understand how ungrateful you're being. Mom's face hardened. She reached into her purse, pulled out the key, and slapped it into my palm without a word. I walked toward the door, and Dad called after me, "You're turning your back on your whole family over nothing." I left without answering. 3 months passed, and none of them called me. Not once. They didn't apologize, didn't ask for money, didn't even check to see how I was doing. But I kept paying their bills like always, Justin and Kayla's rent, Mom's utilities, because that's what I'd always done, and habits die hard. I barely went to the lake house during those months. Work was insane, and honestly, the place felt tainted by what had happened. But finally, I finished this massive project that had been consuming my life for months. I decided to take a whole week off and spend it at the lake house, reconnecting with the peace I'd bought and paid for. Friday evening, I loaded up my car with groceries and clothes for the week. I was looking forward to 7 solid days of sleeping in, reading books on the deck, and maybe doing some light work from my upstairs office. But when I pulled into the driveway, every single light in the house was blazing. Music was blasting so loud I could hear it over my car engine. My first thought was burglary, but burglars don't usually announce their presence with a dance party. I walked up to the front door and tried to unlock it with my key. It wouldn't turn. Someone had left their key in the lock from the inside, blocking mine completely. I knocked loudly on my own door. After a few seconds, Mom opened it. She looked surprised to see me, but not scared or guilty, just surprised, like I was the one who didn't belong there. "Avery, what are you doing here?" "This is my house, Mom." "What are you doing here?" She shrugged with this casual indifference that made my blood boil. "I made a copy of the key before I gave it back to you. We decided to have a little family party tonight." I looked past her into the living room and couldn't believe what I saw. The place was packed with people. Dad, Justin with some girl I'd never seen, Kayla with her boyfriend, and what looked like half our extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I only saw at weddings, they all waved at me cheerfully and went back to their conversations like this was completely normal. "You made a copy without telling me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Don't spoil everyone's good time," Mom said, still blocking the doorway. "We'll be out of here Sunday night. I want to come inside. I have bags in my car and I need to put my stuff in my room." That's when Kayla appeared next to Mom with the sickeningly sweet smile that I wanted to wipe off her face. "Sorry, there's no room for you. We've got people sleeping in both bedrooms and the couches are all taken. If you really need to sleep somewhere, you could always use your car." Before I could find words, Mom and Kayla stepped back and slammed the door in my face. I walked back to my car and sat there for about 10 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me wanted to call the police right then and have them all arrested for trespassing. They had no legal right to be in my house. I had taken the key back, told them they weren't welcome, and they had made an unauthorized copy. But they were still my family. As angry as I was, the thought of watching my parents get handcuffed and put in a police car made me physically sick. So I made a different choice. I drove home to my apartment, unpacked my week's worth of clothes, and sat down at my computer. I logged into my bank account and started canceling things. First, I canceled the automatic rent payments for Justin's studio apartment. Then Kayla's rent payments. Finally, I canceled the monthly transfer I sent Mom for utilities and groceries. It felt good. Really, really good. For 3 years, I'd been sending them over $2,300 every month, and what did I get for it? Snide comments about my spending, lectures about how I should share more, and now this, being locked out of my own house and told to sleep in my car. Saturday and Sunday crawled by. I tried to distract myself with Netflix and cleaning my apartment, but I was dying to know what was happening at the lake house. Sunday evening, I checked Kayla's Instagram. She had posted a bunch of photos from what she called our family vacation at the lake house. Not Avery's lake house or my sister's place, just the lake house, like it belonged to all of us. The photos showed exactly what I expected: people drinking on my deck, someone doing a cannonball off my dock, a group shot in my living room with everyone holding beer bottles and grinning like they'd won the lottery. The caption said, "Best family weekend ever. Back to reality tomorrow." Monday morning, I drove back to the lake house. They were gone, but the damage was obvious. Empty bottles and cans everywhere, food ground into the deck, cigarette butts floating in the lake near my dock. The inside was even worse than after Kayla's first party. It took me the entire day to clean everything again. Tuesday morning, I called a locksmith. "I need all the locks changed on my house. Can you come out today?" He showed up around noon and replaced every lock, front door, back door, and the deadbolt I'd installed when I first bought the place. Then I called a security company. "I need a full alarm system. Motion detectors, door sensors, and cameras around the whole perimeter." They came out Wednesday and spent the whole day installing everything. Cameras at every corner of the house, motion sensors in the yard, door alarms, and a control panel that would send alerts directly to my phone. If anyone so much as stepped on my property without permission, I would know about it immediately. I spent the rest of that week at the lake house, finally enjoying the peace and quiet. The new security system made me feel safe, and honestly, it was incredible to be there without worrying about my family showing up uninvited. None of them called me, not once during that entire week. They either hadn't tried to pay their bills yet, or they had money saved up and didn't realize I'd cut them off. Either way, the silence was telling. They only contacted me when they needed something. The next Friday evening, I was back in my apartment making dinner when my phone buzzed with a security alert. I opened the app and watched the camera feed from my lake house. Dad and Justin were walking around the house, trying to look in windows. Mom and Kayla were standing by the front door. Then Justin tried his key in the lock. When it didn't work, he tried again, jiggling it and pushing on the door. Dad came over and tried his own key. Nothing. My phone started ringing, Mom's number. I didn't answer. Then Kayla called, then Justin. I ignored all of them. On the camera, I watched Dad and Justin walk around to the back of the house. They found the sliding door that leads to the deck and tried to force it open. When that didn't work, Justin picked up one of my patio chairs, and I realized he was about to break the glass. That's when I called 911. Someone is trying to break into my house, I told the dispatcher. I'm watching them on my security cameras right now. Are you at the property? No, I'm at home in the city, but they're definitely trying to break in. One of them just picked up a chair and looks like he's about to smash my sliding door. We're sending officers to the location now. I stayed on the line and kept watching the cameras. Justin smashed the sliding door with the chair and stepped through the broken glass into my living room. Dad followed him. A few seconds later, they unlocked the front door from the inside and let Mom and Kayla in. I watched my family spread out through my house like they owned it. Kayla went straight to the kitchen, opening cabinets. Mom headed upstairs to the bedrooms. Dad was examining my new alarm control panel, probably trying to figure out how to turn it off. Then I saw the police cars pull into my driveway, lights flashing. 2 officers got out and approached the front door with their hands on their weapons. What happened next was exactly what I had been afraid of, but also exactly what they deserved. The officers shouted commands. My family came out with their hands up, looking confused and scared. Within 10 minutes, all 4 of them were in handcuffs, sitting in the back of police cars. My phone rang, the police. Ma'am, we've detained 4 individuals who broke into your property. They're claiming to be your family members. Can you confirm their identities? I looked at their names and birth dates. Yes, those are my family members. Did you give them permission to enter your property tonight? No. I specifically told them they were not allowed on my property. They made unauthorized copies of my keys, so I had all the locks changed and install the security system. We'll need you to come to the station to file a formal complaint. Can you be here tonight? I'm not feeling well, I lied. I'll come in first thing tomorrow morning. I hung up, poured myself a glass of wine, and turned off my phone. For the first time in years, I went to sleep with a smile on my face. Saturday morning, I took my time getting ready. I made myself a nice breakfast, read the news, and genuinely enjoyed the fact that my family had spent the night in jail while I slept peacefully in my own bed. Around 10, I turned my phone back on. 37 missed calls. Dozens of frantic text messages from numbers I didn't recognize, probably other relatives trying to reach me. I deleted all the messages without reading them and drove to the police station. The officer at the front desk led me to a small room where Detective Sullivan was waiting with paperwork. Ms. Carson, your family members are asking to speak with you. They've been here all night and they're pretty upset. I'm sure they are. Before we go any further, I need to ask, do you want to press formal charges for breaking and entering? This is a serious felony charge. They could face significant jail time. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see them face real consequences for once, but they were still my family, even if they were terrible people. I don't want to press charges, I said finally. Detective Sullivan shrugged and made notes. That's your choice. We'll process their release, but it might take a few hours. They're asking to speak with you before you leave. Bring them out. A few minutes later, another officer brought them into the room. They looked absolutely awful, tired, scared, and still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Mom's hair was a mess, Kayla had mascara streaked down her cheeks, Dad looked furious, and Justin just looked confused. Avery, thank God, Mom said, reaching for me. You have to get us out of here. This is all a big misunderstanding. I stepped back so she couldn't touch me. It's not a misunderstanding. You broke into my house. We're family, Kayla said, starting to cry again. You can't just abandon us like this. Watch me. Justin finally spoke up. Come on, Avery. Just pay our bail and we can work this out at home. I'm not paying anything. You want out? Figure it out yourselves. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You're really going to leave your own parents in jail? You're really going to break into your daughter's house and then act like the victim? We just wanted to use the house for the weekend, Mom said weakly. The house I changed the locks on after you made unauthorized copies of my keys. Because you trashed my house twice and refused to clean up after yourselves. Because you told me to sleep in my car outside my own house. Kayla stopped crying and glared at me. You're being ridiculous. It's just a house. It's my house that I bought with my money. Money that I've been sharing with all of you for years while you complained that I didn't share enough. They all looked at each other, trying to figure out what to say next. And just so you know, I continued, I stopped paying all your bills. Justin, your rent check bounced this week. Kayla, yours too. Mom, I'm not sending you utility money anymore. You want my money? You should have treated me better. The room went completely silent. Mom's face went white. You can't do that, Kayla whispered. I already did. Have a nice life. I walked out of the police station and drove home. Over the next few weeks, my phone rang constantly with calls from relatives I barely knew. My cousin Melissa called to tell me that Mom and Dad had promised to let her use my lake house for her engagement party. You should have asked me first, I told her. But they said it was okay. They don't own my house, Melissa. They have no right to promise it to anyone. She hung up on me. Through mutual friends, I heard all about what happened after I cut them off financially. Justin and Kayla couldn't make their rent and had to move back in with Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad were struggling to pay their utility bills without my monthly contributions. Dad had to pick up extra shifts at work, and Mom was talking about getting a part-time job. Everyone blamed me, of course. According to the Family Gossip Network, I was cruel and selfish. I had turned my back on my family over petty grievances. I was letting money go to my head and forgetting where I came from. I blocked all their numbers and social media accounts. I didn't want to hear their complaints or their attempts to guilt me into resuming their allowances. For the first time in years, I was keeping my entire paycheck for myself, and it felt absolutely amazing. A month later, I was back at my lake house, enjoying the peace and quiet. The security system gave me complete confidence that no one could bother me there. I spent the weekend on my deck, reading and working on personal coding projects without a single interruption. My family still thinks I'm the bad guy in this story. They think I overreacted and that I should forgive them and go back to supporting them financially. But here's what I realized during all those quiet mornings on my deck, watching the sun rise over water that belongs to me. I don't care what they think anymore. I spent years being their personal ATM while they criticized every purchase I made and every decision I took. They showed me exactly how much they valued me when they locked me out of my own house and suggested I sleep in my car. They showed me their priorities when they refused to clean up after themselves because I was rich enough to handle it. I'm not rich enough to buy their respect, and I'm not stupid enough to keep trying. I'm done with all of them until they figure out how to treat me like a human being instead of a bank account. And honestly, I'm not holding my breath. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones who take the most. Sometimes family loyalty is just a pretty name for financial abuse. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only see dollar signs when they look at you. Thanks for listening, and if you connected with this story, share it with others who might need to hear it, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to choose yourself when others won't. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce.